I mean, this idea of flow is so much in the vernacular now, and my sense is that people are trying to measure their level of engagement against some sort of theoretical idea of what it's like to be in that flow state. And if they're not experiencing it, they feel like they're doing it wrong, or they feel guilty, or they beat themselves up. And for me, a lot of it is just hard work. Like right now, I'm trying to finish this book. And I should have been working on this book for like the last 9 months, right? And I just couldn't get it together. Like it's a collaborative project, so there's a lot of different people that are involved in this. And they've been working diligently, sort of daily, putting this thing together. And I've just been focusing on the podcast and been unable to immerse myself in this project, because I know from past book projects, when I go all in, like the addict in me kicks in, and it's like, it just becomes my universe. And I've been completely paralyzed from taking that on. And so I've dithered away most of the quarantine without being productive on this project. And then about 10 days ago, we had a meeting and we established this deadline at July 10th to turn this thing in. And it was like a switch got flicked and I went all in, and it's all I can think about now. And in fact, everything else feels like extraneous and a distraction. I just want to get back so I can focus on this thing. And 10 days ago, I couldn't get myself into that position. And it's made me think about like what is going on in my brain that, it's such a drastic state change. And what did I do to switch that? Well, a deadline was imposed upon me, and whatever happened neurochemically with that set in motion like a chain reaction of events that got me into the chair. And once I began the project, for me, it's all about like momentum, right? It's like getting to the starting line and beginning is so hard. Like I will just go forever without doing it. And then I'm in, and then I'm all in 110%. And I'm like, why can't I be that person who just worked on it, an hour and a half every day for the last 3 months?
Well, I can offer some potential explanations. Yeah. I can relate.
And none of it involves a flow state.
Right.
It's all hard.
Yeah, and I'm friends with Steven Kotler. I think flow, and I think the Csikszentmihalyi, who originated this thing of flow, is really interesting. But I say right now, the most we can say about flow mechanistically is backwards, it spells wolf. We don't really understand flow. Mm-hmm. Now, people have come up with these theories. It's like hyperfrontality. I haven't seen the data, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm putting that out there as a prompt for people to discover this. I think that, and to work on it. I think it's a really interesting, highly desirable state, but I think we need to get comfortable as a culture in trying to understand our species and how we work, that the early stages of hard work and focus are gonna feel like agitation, stress, and confusion, because that's the norepinephrine and adrenaline system kicking in. None of us would expect to walk into the gym and do our PR lift, or a performer go do something without warming up. The brain also needs to warm up and start to hone in which circuits are gonna be active. And it's unreasonable for us to think, oh, I've got an hour, I'm gonna plop down and write beautifully for an hour, my best work. We need to accept that there's a period of agitation and stress that accompanies the dropping into these highly concentrated states. Now, in terms of the reward that accompanies the feeling that we're funneling into that groove of being productive in one regime, like for you writing this book, the dopamine system is really important to understand. So we've talked about norepinephrine kind of gets you going. Acetylcholine is the spotlight of attention. The dopamine system is Mother Nature's hardwired ancient system in all animals, including humans, to put us on the right path. Now, a lot of people talk about dopamine as this thing that you get when you publish the book, or when you get the book deal, or when something wonderful happens, like your child's born, and that's true. But dopamine's main role is to be released anytime you achieve a milestone or you think you're on the right path. And when the dopamine system is tethered to a particular pattern of focus, remember duration, path, and outcome. So it's like, okay, you sit down, maybe you don't get much text out, but then the next day you get 800 words of really solid text and you feel good. You're like, I'm into this. What does that dopamine system do? The dopamine system takes the norepinephrine, which is normally rate limiting, like at some point, there's so much norepinephrine that you quit, and we can talk about that. It's actually the substrate for quitting. Dopamine can push that noradrenaline back down, that adrenaline back down and give you more room, more space to do duration, path, and outcome work, highly focused work. And I'm making duration, path, outcome synonymous with highly focused work. Why would this happen? So let's think about an animal. Let's think about a deer that wakes up and is thirsty. And it's wandering out looking for water. That animal needs water. It doesn't know that it needs water. It experiences agitation. The same way that a baby feels agitation when it wants food, but it doesn't know it needs food. It just feels agitation and cries, and a caretaker comes, hopefully. That deer is now foraging for something that it needs. And let's say it smells water, because deer can actually do that, and arrives at a stream and takes a sip of water. There's dopamine release then that puts it on a path to maybe a larger lake or something of that sort, or to be able to go achieve food. So when we are on the right path and we hit a milestone, dopamine is released, and it tends to tighten our focus more for that activity. So the dopamine, this is why drugs of abuse and why alcoholism and some process addictions, which are behavioral addictions, are so dangerous, because a lot of those drugs of abuse are dopamine. So it becomes this cyclical loop where there's no other behavior that can evoke the same level of release.
Right.
In fact, I sort of define addiction as a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. And I say that because it really is the way that the dopamine system works. Normally, the dopamine system is designed to be generic. It's designed to get me to do lots of things, social interactions, work, exercise, all those things. Just like the stress system is designed to get me out of bed in the morning, a cortisol pulse is what gets me out of bed in the morning. It's also what led me to pursue a career in science out of fear initially, and eventually pleasure. So the dopamine system is tethered to those states of focus. And it's what Mother Nature designed so that the neural plasticity would occur and you would want to continue those behaviors again